Hey guys, my name is VaulSC. Hope that you're doing well. In this video, we're going to take a look at a battle report between 100 Kingdoms and the Wadroon from Conquest, The Last Argument of Kings by Parabellum. This is a game from last weekend. If you guys have checked out my most recent video where it's 100 Kingdoms against Old Dominion, I'll be using the exact same list because it was on the same day. Had the game against OD in the morning, played against the Orcs in the afternoon against my buddy Hayden. Slightly different mission, which we'll go into in a minute, but it was also a really good close game, really fun one, and I think that we can learn quite a bit, although the feeling of this game is a bit different because my usual Old Dominion opponent has become much stronger because his faction has been buffed significantly, whereas the Wadroon have been nerfed a little bit, and what I was sort of facing with Wadroon, especially on Tabletop Simulator, is a bit different now. In my opinion, Wadroon have been correctly nerfed in some different ways. The Tontor not being able to benefit from Mantle of the Devoted is the really huge one. But also, Thunder Riders not being able to benefit either makes it interesting. You have to look for other things in the list to help you win. The Warlord supremacy ability for the Chief has changed around as well. You can't have your entire army benefiting from shock. It's going to be two types of units, either the infantry and monsters or the cavalry and the brutes. So they've changed a fair bit. In my opinion, I probably wouldn't have nerfed them as harshly. I would have gone ahead and buffed a few of the other weaker, supremacy abilities in the faction and magic items. And I think that simply toning down the Chief a little bit, not as much as it has been, and Mantle of Devoted, again, toning it down just a little bit would have been fine. Personally, I think with the Chief Warlord, what I would have done is I would have kept it the same, except made it so that only the Chief's Warband gets shock, and then once per game you can extend it to the rest of the army. And that way it stays similarly in line with what's been there, but just takes the edge and the pain off it, really, for the oppression of other players. And while you do that, you go to the other characters and make their supremacy abilities just a little bit better, so that there's a bit more interest in list building in terms of which supremacy do you take. In my opinion, it's still well worth taking the Chief. I think he really is the right Warlord. Okay, well, let's get into this game. Maelstrom is the mission. This is a great one. It's a mission that does not award any victory points for regiment kills at all. So, if you've got a very big army list with a lot of activations, then great. That's a great way to approach this. During the mid-game, turns 5 to 8, you get more points for having the middle zone. And then it goes back to the side zones as yielding more objective points for the last couple of turns. So that's something we're going to need to pay attention to in this game. Going to the army lists, you guys have seen my 100 Kingdoms army list before in my previous battle report, but just the overall idea here is that the officer goes in the Gilded Legion and he has Armor of Dominion, and it's only 2 wide, so it's very hard for them to avoid the effect of Armor of Dominion where it stands in contact. And it's very much a late game heavy list. The Noble Lord in the Knights, he's not the leader, so he does not have the supremacy ability. He does not have veterans for the Knights either, but he does have Olefants for Raw, and there are 4 of them. So it's sort of like a middling, intermediate level strength Knights unit. And I play it that way just so that they can easily beat up on a small to light to medium unit, but I'm not investing so many points in them that it becomes crushing when they get countercharged and die. And still liking the +1 wound on the Crimson Tower Knight, so we'll see how they go. But more importantly, the opponent here playing the Matriarch Queen as the Warlord because he's just, wanting to try out a different Warlord choice now that the Chief has been nerfed a little bit. Still running the Chief, of course, just because he's got these awesome Thunder Riders here, and Brontoskalps is still a very good artifact to have on them. Using Famine, traditionally the Thunder Riders have been really the war choice here because they're already defense 3. Taking up the defense 4 is very important when they're such a valuable unit. And getting a cleave on them is very nice as well since they have cleave already. Do they get cleave +1? Let's just quickly check that. Am I wrong about that? So the Chieftain has cleave 2. These guys don't have cleave naturally, which is, I think, one of the reasons why people like war on them. Previously, Mantle of Devoted would get them up to tier 3 with Fanatic, and they would get Blessed as well, and that's where they become really overpowered. So I can understand them changing Mantle of the Devoted to be infantry only. Personally, if I was going to play Wadroon, I would still go for a Chief Warlord. I would have the foot-mounted one. I would still give him Mantle of Devoted every single list. And I would still run the Tauntaur, even though he has been weakened a little bit. He's just extremely strong and well worth every point. And Trample 8 versus Trample 10 or whatever they've changed there just makes very negligible difference. The thing about the Tauntaur is that there's just pretty much nothing in the game that can one-round him, and he's always going to get chances to use all of his big library block of abilities to crush one regiment after another. The Scion of Conquest, although his ability here does not actually get you to activate your next unit straight away, because of the character change where you can activate a character and then the regiment they are in, you can still do this combo where the Scion activates and chants for something, the Chosen activate next, they chant for something, and then they scream across the board by marching 5 plus 3 to 8, and then charging another 5 plus d6, and then clashing with all of their really good abilities here. It is still pretty nutty. So I think if you really want to play the meta and be a successful Wadroon player, Chosen and Conquest are a great choice. And by the way, with all of these other Chosen units left to come out, I think that all of these are bonkers, how powerful these other Chosen units is. Because let's face it, tier 3 of the Wadroon chant system is always just extremely crazy. So getting that is really strong. My opponent playing War on the Matriarch Queen, and that's the way to do it with the Braves. This is an extremely dangerous unit because they're quite tough, and the Queen heals them, and getting +1 defense and Cleave and Blessed is just really, really powerful. Alrighty, so let's go into these games. Where are we going to find this? Hang on, Conquest 2024, Wadroon, Proc, here we go. So this is going to be the setup. May as well just bring in the camera just in the corner so we can look at everything going on here. Coffee cup, as you can see. So I've only got 2 light units. That's the crossbowmen and the horses there. My opponent just has the hunters. So I've got these 2 cards here. Only the I think actually both units were going to come on. So the first unit here is going to be the crossbowmen, and they're just going to come up to this hill on the right-hand side. Range units do like hills because then you can move another infantry unit in front of them and they can shoot over top of them. So that's the thinking there. Opponent bringing the hunters on the opposite side. Hunters have become stronger all of a sudden because they now have loose formation, which means that when you shoot at them, you're half barrage. So in a shootout between one light regiment one light regiment shooting unit and another, the hunters have a bit of an advantage there. So coming into turn 2, we in fact did not have the Squires initially, so they are now coming on turn 2. We're going to bring in the Knights and the Noble Lord, and the Mercenary Crossbowmen already there, and unfortunately didn't roll for my other medium unit, which was the Men-at-Arms. So opponent bringing on his light unit of, well, not his small unit of Blooded. They are a medium unit. Running the Tracker, mind you, the Tracker is different from the usual Aberration. The Tracker instead gives them Flank and Fiend Hunter. Fiend Hunter, a very strong rule. Overall, I personally prefer the Aberration still, or the Champion for the +1 attack, because that takes them up to attack 7, and if you're giving them any sort of war, like any sort of cult which increases their clash, such as Death, for example, or if you're still running the Chief Foot Warlord, as I would normally do, they still get the +1 from the shock as well. The Queen also showing up alongside them. She is in a large unit. My opponent has put 6 stands of Braves on the battlefield here, but that is just a mistake from him later in the game. When we realized his mistake, we took 1 stand off and just put them there with 5 blocks. The Squires rushing through the forest here, just trying to find a sneaky place to go. They want to avoid being charged. They want to try to increase the reinforcement line for my later turns and just to see if they can make their way past enemy regiments or just get in the way to screen. We then have the crossbows trying to get into position, staying out of range of the hunters there because they know they'll lose that shootout. We then have the knights arriving behind them in a long line. The thinking here with the knights is that what I can do in future turns is I can rush up and bully the hunters and kill them and then run away. But if he sees that I'm going to do that and commits really hard with a lot of heavy units behind the hunters, the knights could run over into the middle of the battlefield and help me to beat the Queen's unit, which is going to be a unit I'm going to definitely need to defeat in the long run. So hunters move up, get a few shots off on the crossbowmen and take out, I think, 1 stand, so some pretty good shooting there. Turn 3 now, I will be activating the Squires first to see if they need to reposition, and then the crossbows will try to shoot, and everything else will activate after that. We're going with the Knights last, because we want to see if he deploys anything opposite them first before committing them. If he doesn't, I might just charge the Hunters, but if he commits a lot of really powerful stuff, then I can always run away, as we talked about. So, here we are. On the top left of the photo, you can see his Conquest chosen coming in. So I'm going to have to deal with them at some point on that left flank. They're extremely fast, so I have an opportunity to maybe put the Squires in the way to screen them. You need to have some sort of plan against that unit, because they will out-threat anything else in your list that you can possibly take. We have the Hunters once again in a shootout against the Mercenary Crossbowmen, taking a little bit of damage here and there, but generally doing their job. Squires are actually backing up by marching backwards twice, so backwards half at twice speed. They can actually go back at full distance of 9, which is their march distance, because they march twice, so 4.5 plus 4.5. And they have to do this because my opponent could potentially activate the Chosen of Conquest, march and then charge and then clash me, or if he wants to, march, charge, and he'd get in contact, and there's going to be no escaping for these Squires, and I'd just lose them there and then. So that's how powerful the Chosen of Conquest are. Very good choice right now for Wadroon. Speaking of good choices, the Thunder Riders were a very good choice last patch. They've been nerfed a fair bit. I think they're still okay, but they're nothing like what they used to be, where they'd always have shock and they could have Mantle of Devoted, etc. But they look cool, and they're coming up the flank opposite the Knights, so this gives the Knights a bit of a choice. Do they face the Thunder Riders, or do they flee? There's the positioning, so you can see them coming up the extreme left-hand flank onto that zone there, and I've only deployed the Knights and the Crossbowmen. So, like we saw last weekend with the other bat rep against Old Dominion, I could just try and kill the Hunters and run away, and that would force the Thunder Riders essentially to stay there, because my opponent doesn't really have a lot in the way of small scoring units, and I'm feeling like in this patch the small scoring units are really key. Like, he's deployed the Braves and the Blooded already in the center, and the Chosen are elsewhere. So if you look at this photo, what is he going to hold the zone with? The Tontor, like the Apex Predator? So I might be able to sort of leave something stranded there. So Mercenary Crossbowmen, again, getting a bit of a shot off. I have lost one stand, but they are retaliating with a few crossbow bolts at half barrage. He is activating his Chosen here and moving them out, but not charging me just yet. He's just rushing forward. Importantly, they are on this zone, so they'll be scoring with the bonus. I won't be able to get on there to match them. All I can really do is get something in their way and then charge the next turn, and I may have to sacrifice an entire unit against these guys. I quite like giving these guys defensive buffs if possible, because it's just so painful when they get to survive and charge something else. Alright, so seeing this opportunity, given that he's already activated, and this is an important point, knowing that he's not going to charge me this turn, I'm moving in with the Crimson Tower Knights, and I'm moving them in a position where if I win the roll, I can charge and get the clash action as well, doing a lot of damage. The downside to this is that if I lose the roll, he can activate first and charge me and clash me, and he'll get impact hits. The thinking is, though, that if that happens, this will definitely be the Supremacy turns where I'll have Blessed. So I'm Defense 4 with rerolls. I can then possibly clash with the character or one stand later, and I can charge him in the flank with their Squires. And if I don't manage to reduce the unit down to a sizable number or a more manageable number of stands, then I can possibly clean them up with the Ashen Dawn or something else later. But the risk is fairly low, because I've sort of got that contingency plan if I lose the roll, but the reward is very high, because if I win the roll, I might just be able to flat out wipe out one of the most powerful units in his army for free. So yeah, he may have come a bit too far forward. The Queen, just barreling along ahead, they have Bloodlust, mind you, so with the unit size and the Queen's leadership, they will only fail on a 6, but this is a bit of a liability, because if I put my unit somewhere nearby, that's going to force them to charge in the wrong direction or end up out of position. That could be a liability for them. Blooded keeping pace with them, just both double marching up near to this zone in the center. My opponent then has the Tontor coming on, and I was really curious about where he'd put the Tontor. I thought it might be problematic if the Tontor goes up the same flank as the Chosen, given that they're in trouble and they need some support. I also thought he could go in the center because I'm inevitably going to have to commit to the center and deal with the queen. And if I don't deal with the queen, he just leaves his 1 unit of blood at there to score, and both the queen and the Tontor can move elsewhere. But he has decided to come around this flank, and what this means is that I now have the option to charge the hunters, wipe them out. He pretty much has nothing left to just strand on the side other than the apex predator. So it's going to mean that either the predator or the Tontor or the Thunder Riders are going to have to camp this zone for the rest of the game for him to score, meaning that I won't have to deal with that particular unit. But I could. I still have the option to try and deal with them. So I think that this placement of the Tontor works well for me. In the center, I'm marching in with 6 stands of Steel Legions spread into one long line. And that is because I feel like with Oblivious and Defense 3, I should be able to survive a charge from one of these 2 units and then completely wipe them out. And with Cleave 2, they give me the best chance of beating the Queen's unit. I don't really want to get charged because he's got Death Gaze. But if I put myself exactly 12 inches away, or 11 inches away I should say, that means that he can't charge Clash unless he rolls a 6 for the charge. It also means that if he fails the Bloodlust check, he'll have to try and charge me, making it unlikely he'll complete the charge, giving me some great opportunities here, and I still have more units left to deploy. So kind of liking this positioning for the Steel Legion. I don't really want them going after the Tontor or the Thunder Riders, because even though I have some good cleave there, those 2 units are just so resilient and they pump out so much damage against the Steel Legion. I don't think that would be worth it. So having thought about what to do here, I figured, well, since I'm going to be committing the Knights against the Hunters to wipe them out, I could bring the the Gilded Legion around to fight the Thunder Riders, given that they're the one thing that's going to shut off their impact hits. And that might actually allow me to stop a lot of scoring for quite a long time. And although I'm likely to lose everything on this flank, he's committed way more in terms of points and importance to this flank than I have. And it will mean that everything else that I'm going to bring on the left side should be enough to beat what he's got there. Thinking about it in hindsight, I think I probably should really have just brought the Gilded Legion through the center and just made absolutely sure I crushed that, and then turned around, and because he would have to bring either the Tontor or the Thunder Riders towards the center later anyway, so that confrontation would be happening. And these guys also work quite well against Death's Gaze, because they shot off the impact hits and shock and spite and all that. So yeah, I don't think this is probably the best plan for me. The Knights just picking up and reforming a little bit, and in fact I decided not to charge straight away. I wanted to see where it'd go first. But reforming them does give me the option of charging through to the center instead. I was a little bit incoherent with my plan here, because I'm just talking about like running away, but also I'm deploying the Gilded Legion, so a bit indecisive, I suppose. The first card has to be the Crimson Tower Knights, of course, because they are staring down the Conquest chosen to Conquest. The last activation is going to be the Steel Legion, because I need to see what he does with his Queen and his Blooded before I commit them. Hopefully he charges me with one of those 2 units, so I can then just clash and move forward. So luckily, winning the roll, this is really important. I feel like the game would just be, difficult if I didn't win this roll, but still winnable. But because I have won the roll, they charge straight in here. This is the Blessed Turn, so I can use it on my impact hits if I want to, and that severely knocks them out. But unfortunately for me, it doesn't actually kill them. I think I left the last stand on like a couple of wounds, and the character stays around, of course, so is going to require me to spend some more time defeating them. So there they are, reduced to just the 1 stand plus the character. The crossbowmen over here taking some damage and returning fire again in the long shootout against the Hunters. He's deciding to actually double march the Hunters in the way here, because he suspects me trying to charge something through with the Knights, or possibly the Gilded Legion rushing through in front of the Tontor and preventing him from moving onto the zone. So instead of shooting me, he's going in there with the Hunters, which was a really interesting play. Don't know if I would have done that. I think I probably would have pulled them back, if anything. But they are screening me, that's for sure. Over here, his Blooded moving up, not charging yet. So just hanging out near the zone. I think that if I were him, I probably would have at least touched the zone, but He's staying in a position where it's going to be hard for me to charge clash with my big mob. Over here we have a duel going on between the Scion of Conquest and the Priory Commander, which leaves us both battered and bruised, but we both stay alive. I figured that my character would be tougher than his, so I decided to make that play. It just means that if I kill his character and we go into a round next turn, and he wins the roll and he attacks me with his chosen of Conquest, he at least doesn't have the character to cast spells and stuff like that. And the character, quite annoyingly, has a spell which stops me from scoring, so I didn't really want him to do that. So that's why I attempted to challenge him, but I unfortunately didn't manage to kill him. Over here, so again, we have the Steel Legion facing off against the Queen. That's the positioning of it. The Queen does make the move to charge and... Sorry, march and then charge. So by marching and then charging, he safely ensures that I don't get onto the zone while he stays on the zone. It does mean that he benefits from Death's Gaze, which is impacts. So you've got the Braves here. These guys have Blessed now, which is quite crazy, and Death's Gaze is going to give him impact 2 for everybody in it, and Glorious Charge. So that does a fair bit of damage, but remember, they don't have shock, or do they? I can't quite remember. I know that they've got Glorious Charge, which is a big deal. So that makes a difference. So they do some damage, but they start at Clash 2. But importantly, he's not going to actually do a Clash there. He's only going to be doing impact hits, meaning that I can actually attack him at the end of the turn. Over here, the Thunder Riders move around expecting a charge from the Gilded Legion, so we'll be looking at that shortly. The Squires rushing around here, making sure that in the next turn I can charge his Chosen of Conquest in the flank. They've got 1 wound left and then they die, so the Squires should be able to take them out, and that frees up the Crimson Tower Knights to march all the way around to the center of the table, and that should be game winning in the long run, because I still have my men-at-arms to quickly come along and quietly score objectives, and just the way that this new patch is shaping up without light units involving characters for scoring, small, medium units like men-at-arms are becoming even more powerful than they were before. It's just really good strategic unit. Okay, again, Tontor moving on to the zone, and he's feeling like he doesn't need to do anything with the Tontor, and just holding him off here, and just screening here with the hunters, and just waiting for the inevitable grind to happen, and knowing that the Knights are never going to be able to deal with that Tontor, so he's just content to crush his way through. As we discussed, we have the men-at-arms moving through. I'm just loving this unit more and more and more. It's only 105 points. You don't need to give it a banner or the Bastion upgrade for the Sergeant. You just need to have them moving around. They either screen for your more fragile units, or they just walk onto an objective and allow all of your other units to move off the objective and go after other strategic parts of the battlefield. So just really helpful. The Ashen Dawn move through, and I'm feeling like the Ashen Dawn could move over and help out on the side of the Thunder Riders and the Tontor. It's just that the Thunder Riders and the Tontor are the two things that he has that can actually deal with these guys. So what I'd rather do is just steamroll this flank, make sure we absolutely crush the Chosen. He's moved in with his Dinosaur in the background. The Ashen Dawn can easily deal with that guy as well. And then we move the remaining units into the midfield to help destroy the Queen, while leaving the men-at-arms on the left flank. So that should be the game-winning action, to be honest. So really cool thing, I'm just going to turn this off so we can see the photo. The Knights charging through on the Hunters and absolutely wiping them out. The really helpful thing here is that I've got 5 stands, and although the Tontor's on the zone, it only counts for 3 stands, so it can potentially allow me to score here and get a scoring lead before he crushes me and starts scoring the zone for the rest of the game. And we're still in the section of the game where their bonus points are scored for these side objectives. So this works, the Hunters are wiped out. And note that I've also got the edge of the Knights there, just creeping past that Chief. So if you look at their positioning of the Knight unit here, that base, he can't really wheel past it, so that's going to prevent the Thunder Riders from charging and clashing the Gilded Legion once I move up. Even though the Gilded Legion will shut off any sort of shock, inspired, or impact hits, the clash action from these guys is still going to do an absolute number on me, and that's going to be painful. I don't really want that, so getting the Knights in the way is nice. Gilded Legion now moving through and just preparing to have this onslaught and this slog with the Thunder Riders, and it'll be helpful just to keep both of his units just stuck on the side of the table forever, and preventing them from really dealing with me until I've just got an absolute horde of troops massed in the middle of the table at the end. So over here, the Steel Legion attack, and they pump out something like 30 plus attacks, but the problem is that his Braves have +1 defense and Blessed, so the cleave takes him down to saving on 2s, but he's rolling on 2s and then re-rolling them again, so it's pretty nasty. The Steel Legion, just like the previous game you saw, absolutely whiff, and on statistics they should do a ton of damage here, but they end up only killing 2 stands. Sadly, that's going to mean that the Queen's going to bring 1 stand back, and I will lose the Steel Legion after a period of time if he activates before me with Fanatic on the Queen's unit for war. But if I win the roll and activate these guys first, they will wipe out the Queen because he won't have Blessed, he won't have +1 defense, he'll only be saving on 1s with no rerolls, so that's going to be a really big deal to win that roll next turn. So looking out here, you can see he's going to be winning the right-hand flank in the next 2 or 3 turns. I've pretty much already won the left-hand flank, and the center of the table is going to depend on whether I win the roll for supremacy with the Steel Legion against the Queen. Otherwise, it's going to be the Ashen Dawn having to eventually beat them, but that's going to be problematic because he's going to score so many points in the next couple of turns in the center. So here we go. The Steel Legion have to activate first. That's crucial. Ashen Dawn last because they want to see what the Apex Predator does. Everything through the center doesn't matter too much. The Squires are going after the Steel Legion because they want to charge the Chosen in the flank before they activate and kill them. Now this is going to be interesting because my opponent has a lot of options here. I don't know if he will correctly identify if the Queen is the most important activation. She is, but he may not realize that. He may be looking at the board and thinking, oh gosh, I need to activate the Tauntaur or the Thunder Riders or maybe the Chosen or Conquest, but you can see here that the Queen has to go first because if she doesn't, she dies to the Steel Legion. If she does, she heals back her guys and kills the Steel Legion and keeps scoring, and everything else is going to be pretty inevitable regardless, so it has to be the Queen to heal and then bring back the Braves. So I do win the roll, and it turns out my opponent didn't pick the Queen anyway. He was going to go after the T-Rex, so this was going to happen no matter what. The Steel Legion activate, they inspire and they clash, and they obliterate the Queen's unit. Over here, the Tauntaur attacking the Knights and absolutely stomping them, but not quite wiping them out, interestingly enough, because they are defense 4, and he's only got cleave 1, so somehow they held the line for a little bit. That leaves me to charge the side of the Chosen with the Squires. They wipe out the rest of the Chosen, freeing up the Crimson Tower Knights to swing around and deal with that Predator. The Thunder Riders now charge in against the Gilded Legion, doing very little in the way of impact hits, but again, they have lots of attacks with their clash action, so absolutely murdering these Gilded Legion as it happens. Reducing them down to just a couple of stands, of course, the character and the unit barely alive. Steel Legion are now facing off against the Blooded, who unfortunately can score some points by just camping the zone. Next turn I'll be able to go after them. My attack's back with the Gilded Legion here, just trying to rally and doing a bit of damage to the Thunder Riders, but hardly achieving very much here. Over here with the Predator, he is probably going to be attacking the Squires next, I think. I can't quite remember what happened. Over here, the Crimson Tower Knights marching up and moving around, crucially staying in the zone until the Men-at-Arms can join forces with them. But they'll be heading forward in a moment. We still somehow have the crossbows alive because their nemesis, the Hunter unit, got bowled over. So they are firing a few shots at the Tauntaur. The Tauntaur is a hard target to miss, but in this game system, you don't get any bonus for shooting a large target, so they do a couple of wounds. Ashen Dawn marching forward, just perfectly happy to be charged by the Apex here because we have got Hardened from the Supremacy turn, and do we have Hardened? I can't remember whether it was last turn or this turn for Supremacy. I think it was last turn, but either way, with the rerolls for Blessed and with the Forest turning off his impact hits and his Inspired, I'm happy to take this charge because the Crimson Tower Knights can beat him up later on. Alright, so going into the next turn, Ashen Dawn going to activate first to try and get the jump on the Apex, and if I lose the roll, it doesn't really matter. We're going to go with Gilded Legion after that, and Steel Legion as the last unit, hopefully able to clash those Blooded and march into the zone. So there's the overview. You can see that he's about to start scoring on the right. I'm already scoring on the left. He started scoring in the middle, but I'm soon to stomp the middle section. So Apex Predator charging the Ashen Dawn, not achieving very much here because again, turns off Inspired when he goes in the forest and no impact hits. So this does a little bit of damage to the Ashen Dawn. Remember, they are fearless, so even though he's terrifying 2, they don't care about that. So a great counter unit to the T-Rex, and when they attack him, they do a whole world of pain to him. So that's what happens there. The Blooded have charged in against the Steel Legion, and I do end up taking some damage, surviving like 1 or 2 stands. They have a Tracker, so not the +1 attack from the champion, and no Aberration either, so Tracker not really coming into play. Over here, the Gilded Legion doing a bit of damage to the Thunder Riders, but they're about to get absolutely wiped. So see you later, Gilded Legion. And there you have it, Gilded Legion activating and doing what they do. They are now free to deal with these knights. There's only 2 knights left, and the Tauntaur is about to completely destroy them. So over there, the knights doing a little bit of damage to the Tauntaur before they are removed. Tauntaur, as you can see, nice close-up here. Wonderful paint job. I do hope you guys are going to look out for my film that I'm doing for Conquest, probably next month in March. It's going to be a how to play Conquest video, but it's going to be full of stop-motion animations similar to Table Game Fun Times, so can't wait to show you guys that. And of course, I've borrowed Hayden's army so I can do a lot of photography of the Wadroon, as you may have been seeing on Facebook, social media. Alright, the Tauntaur, having wiped out the knights, now gets to charge as a long bomb into the these guys here, and of course the trample will kill these guys, and then he can run off, so everything has died on this flank, basically. Over here, because I didn't have enough space, unfortunately I made a mistake and activated the Crimson Tower Knights before the Squires could get out of the way. I couldn't charge the Apex to kill it off. I had to sort of move around here, which was kind of painful. So the Squires can turn around now, and we're all surrounding the T-Rex, but only the Ashen Dawn are actually in contact with it. Over here, 2 stands of Steel Legion attack the Blooded and murder them pretty easily, quite handily there. And we're going to now activate the Ashen Dawn first in the next turn so we can remove the Apex Predator and start moving things into the center of the table. But scoring's been happening a bit late. If you look here, my opponent is still keeping neck and neck with me on points because although I have scored the left-hand flank quicker than he's got onto the right-hand flank, he's been scoring in the center and I haven't been. So I'm going to need to have a good, solid few turns of scoring at the end to pull that back, but that should be likely. Over here, Ashen Dawn fighting the T-Rex and, of course, finishing him off eventually. The Steel Legion fighting these Blooded and finishing them off. Moving on to the zone, which is really, really nice. Can score some points there. The Tauntaur now turning around and moving towards them, and this is going to be a problem because if the Tauntaur is able to contest that zone, I may eventually get a draw or a loss, so I'm going to have to deal with them. And, of course, moving nearby to them to kill them. Crimson Tower Knights charge the Apex and destroy it. That frees everybody else up to move into the center. So there you can see it, the Ashen Dawn ready to move around in front of them. At this point, the Thunder Riders, although they're very expensive, their job will just be to completely just sit there and babysit the zone and just score for the rest of the game. That will pretty much be it, and that'll be their lot. And you can sort of see, can't you, how much difference this would be if he had like 1 unit of Blooded just to camp that zone so the Thunder Riders could move off and charge the center along with the Tauntaur later on. Because that way the Tauntaur could just run past and go to the other zone and the Thunder Riders could try to contest the middle or some sort of plan like that. So marching around with the Squires, they want to get in and make sure that the Tauntaur doesn't score. So they are going to get in the way somehow. Next turn, wanting to win the roll and activate the Steel Legion to really try and thwart the Tauntaur's plans somehow. That's going to be the plan. So this is the overview of the table. All I really need to do is score a lot of points in the center and stop the Tauntaur from contesting me or scoring himself. So with the Steel Legion activating first and winning the roll, they decided to move out of the way. The thinking here is that they can then turn around and then charge the Tauntaur. So even if the Tauntaur is just winning the roll and beating up the Squires and killing the Crimson Towers, I can charge from the side with the Steel Legion, do some more damage to him and kill him. But this is actually probably the biggest blunder of the entire game, because if you look back at the previous photo, if I had not done this, if I had simply turned them around and marched them like a millimeter or 1 inch away from the Tauntaur then has to charge them, kill them with the impact hits, and then use the second action to march onto the zone, and he'd only be in the corner of the zone, giving me time to contest with the Squires and get the 2 cavalry units in position to then kill them off. My feeling was that I might not kill him off in time, so that's why I felt like I had to prepare the Steel Legion to charge him, but the more intuitive play of just getting in his way would have been much, much better. So the Tauntaur moves right here in front of these Squires, and he's now firmly in the zone, and unfortunately the Squires are kind of blocking off the Crimson Tower Knights to attack, and I need their strength really to deal with this monster. The Squires aren't going to be able to strip the wounds off of him. So they're just going to march sideways 9 inches, clearing the path for the Crimson Tower Knights. The Crimson Tower Knights then charge. Sadly, you know, I've only got 2 stands in contact, so getting the clash on him becomes complicated. He is oblivious, so doing all of the resolve damage to him really doesn't quite kill him. He's taken a little bit of damage from the Knights and from the Crossbowmen, but he's still got a lot of work to go. So this is where things become difficult. I've got the Ashen Dawn behind, but they are now traffic jammed by the Crimson Tower Knights, and I'd have to really try to charge them there. So next turn we have to activate the Crimson Tower Knights at first and try and kill him. That's what we're going to try and do, but I'm sorry to say that this is actually the end of the game, and the outcome turned out to be a draw instead of a victory for 100 Kingdoms. And this is completely my fault. It's not really about my opponent or about the luck or anything like that. I was quite lucky during this game to win supremacy rolls and to roll well with some units, but the mistake here is just me being complacent and not reading the mission and paying attention to like what score we were on. If we come back to this situation here, I'll find the photo for you guys. When I activate the Squires, what they actually did is they marched sideways over here. What I could have done is I could have reformed so that there's 2 stands in front and 1 stand behind. They fit past the Tauntaur, they marched around past the zone, they then stop him from scoring. And that means that there's no way for him to pick up the extra points. And then when the Crimson Tower Knights charge in, instead of having 2 guys touching the zone there versus the Tauntaur who counts for 3, I am contesting with the Squires. Means my opponent doesn't pick up the points, and I would stay in the lead and I would win. And that's all I needed to do. So I don't really mind like drawing a casual game like this. It was a really fun game, really close, and I know that I played well enough to win, except for that bit of complacency at the end. It's not a tournament game. You know, sometimes I am the kind of person that's like, okay, let me be pedantic, let's work out the reform, and just scuttling into the zone and doing shenanigans and making sure that I don't lose mathematically. Sometimes I'm that kind of player, but a lot of the time I'm not. It's like, oh, it's a casual game. I've already played another game today. You know, it's late in the afternoon. I've got stuff to do. I don't want to sort of bore my opponent by just sitting there and mathing it out. And that's just what happened. I didn't end up doing that. Look, we both had a blast. Some great miniatures on the table, really great photos, and just a really good brawl. And cool to see the post-patch Wadroon. I think that they have been nerfed, but they're still strong enough to contend with a lot of army out there. Tauntaur's still great. The Foot Chief's still great. The veterans with the Chief are very good. Chosen of Conquest, excellent. And, you know, sometimes a different supremacy is okay. I prefer the Foot Chief. And there's plenty of other things in the faction that still do very well. The Blooded, Hunters, Hunting Pack, all that stuff is still really decent. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. I will see you in the next